Hello and welcome to the Fire in the Valley show. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we're joined by the Margarita Khosh. Good morning. Yes, very good morning to you.
Very good morning to you, Pete. First of all, wow, you actually pronounced my last name correctly, which is very, very difficult for most folks.
Wow,
So we're off to an awesome start.
that's always a great start to give us a bit of background. Where's your name come from?
Sure. So my name is Margarita Khosh, and I was born in a city in Ukraine called Khmelnytsky. And we immigrated to America in 1992 when I was 9 years old. So that does make me 38.
Thank you for sparing me the math. That's always a good start. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have no problem saying my age. It's I had a kind of like, I think I was, we were raised like, you don't say, lady never says her age. And I'm like, why? Like, why? What are you afraid of? Like, somebody's gonna find out how old you are. And so I'm 38 years old.
Generally, Facebook tells everyone that these days anyway. It's like, yeah.
Yeah. And if you're on LinkedIn, you could probably do the math of like, somebody has been, doing something for a certain amount of time. I'm pretty sure they didn't start when they were a toddler. Like, they didn't launch a company when they were a toddler. They didn't start practicing medicine when they were in grade school. I mean, if they did, great, Doogie Howser MD for you, but there's really not that many of us. If you exist, I want to meet you.
So give us a bit of background then. What do you do and where do you live now then?
Sure. So what I do and where I live, that's actually interesting, because what I do is I'm a healthcare industry insider. So I am a person who has spent majority of my life working in the healthcare industry, and I help healthcare professionals design a modern healthcare experience so that they can actually reduce healthcare costs and administrative burdens. Now, having an American healthcare system, that's fun, because everything about our healthcare system is programmed to be against something really, really odd, which is that we don't understand, comprehend, process, or accept that the patient is a consumer. I help healthcare professionals and health systems accept it, embrace it, and understand that if they start actually designing their healthcare process based on the concept that the patient is a consumer, all of these other ifs and all of these administrative burdens that are layered on top of each other that drive everybody absolutely bonkers start to cancel each other out. So, and the reason why I'm so passionate about that is, obviously we'll get into that more, but given I call myself a healthcare industry insider because I've been in the healthcare industry since 1997. So I've worked the gambit. Now you guys have a little bit more clarity in your system. We don't have that much clarity in our system, and I look to get there. Clarity is actually my word for 2021. And where I live right now is I am currently in Brooklyn, New York. I've spent most of the past 8 years in Florida, but because thanks to COVID, all of that changed, and now I'm in New York.
Is that a good thing?
So that's an interesting question, because it's a good thing, because I'm thankful to COVID for two things. I'm thankful for COVID because it actually allowed me to have a much more fulfilling relationship with my family, because, never let a good crisis go to waste, famous Winston Churchill quote. And that has an applicable on so many different levels. I have rekindled a relationship with my mother. Me and my brother became a lot more respectful of each other and a lot closer to each other. And from my professional background, I'm thankful to COVID because it literally did the one thing that my industry has lacked, which is it was like steroids or adrenaline to push and propel healthcare forward to embrace technology. The thing that's been accepted by every other industry. Yeah, we, for some reason, were like, no, telehealth is 10, 15 years away. Let's embracing telehealth services. That's for hospitals. That's for like your top notch Cleveland clinics and all of these other things. Like mom and pop shops, they don't need that. They don't need to improve the patient experience. And like overnight, oh my God, we could actually do like 90% of administrative work up front through an app on a phone. And we don't need to waste so much time. So I'm thankful to COVID for those two reasons, because it allowed me to build a relationship with my family, and it completely removed the veil. And we are actually able to see the level. Like we talk about how broken the American healthcare system is. And the thing is that we say that, and we're like, it's like a black and white fact. The sky is blue. American healthcare system is broken. It's expensive. It's too top heavy. We can never change it. It's blah, blah, blah. And then COVID comes along and it's like instant shock. And like, wait, we actually can. And it took a freaking crisis for us to realize that we can actually fix it. So working in the healthcare industry for as long as I did, I've been in different fields. Like I've had the immense privilege of having been surrounded by incredibly brilliant people that are a hell of a lot smarter than me, and learning from them, and actually being responsible for creating certain things that are downright incredible. Like I started an outpatient rehabilitation program for pediatrics, managing a high-risk population that has microcephaly, autism disorder, developmental disabilities, like these little wonderful human beings, because it was pediatrics based. And I got to say for the rest of my life that I created that. So for me, that is so fulfilling that I got to do that. But as many things as I have done in my career, I feel like this year has been really, 2020 has been the pivot. It was like literally nothing in 2020. We never expect how things will happen, right? We have a vision, we put it out in the universe of where we want to go, what we want to do, what we want to accomplish. And I'll be honest, it was difficult because I started my own firm 2 years ago. And in December of 2018, I started my firm, MK Medical Solutions. And it started off on a really super high note. Like I stopped, I finished working, I left my agency, I left my organization, and I had like a backup gig ready to go. And it was wonderful. It was a 6-month engagement and it was really cool. And then I had a few other things, and then things started slowing down. And I had to work additional jobs and but still continue to build on my vision. And when 2020 started, it started on a beautiful sunrise. For the second year in a row, I went to the beach because I lived in Florida at the time. I met the sunrise on the beach. I kind of call it baptism, even though I'm Jewish, but I walked into the water and it was freezing outside. It was so cold for Florida. Yeah, I know I'm in New York, so I can't complain. But for Florida, it was cold and it was windy and it was tad nippy out. And I stepped into the water. It was sunrise, and I still have the picture of that beautiful sunrise. And all of a sudden, the water engulfed me, and it was so warm. It was like hot bath. Like I stepped into a jacuzzi. I'm like, okay, well, this is interesting. And I had all of these emotions, and I said, okay, I'm ready for whatever 2020 has going my way. And I'm putting out into the universe. I stopped believing in, what do you call them in English? Oh my God, resolutions. We have these things, resolutions. And I stopped doing them years ago because 9 out of 10 times by January, I'm done. I don't show up for my resolutions. And then I feel like shit. So I was like, I'm not doing resolutions. For the second year in a row, I said, I'm going to do a word. I'm going to do some kind of a word, like a theme. Mind you, everybody was doing this, but I had no idea. I'm sure on some subconscious level I heard about it. But I'm going to create a word that I want guiding what I want to do. And I didn't know what that word was. So when I stepped into that water and everything was cold around me, but the ocean was really, really hot, this word came at me like a wave, even though the ocean wasn't like very calm and the sunrise was calm. And the word was success. Like I just saw this word hatched in the sun. Like I can't explain it. It was like a cartoon in my mind, and it was just like propelling in front of me. Like, this is your word. You want your word for 2020 to be success. No matter what happens to you, you're gonna let that word guide your decision-making process, and everything you're gonna do is, it was like a third voice was talking to me. So I started showing up with that, like every day after that. I helped some folks in their careers. I coached a few people, trying to enter my market, and another, because I was simultaneously also in the restaurant industry. And I coached some people both in the restaurant industry and in the, in healthcare industry. And I was really happy, like getting there, because I was starting to see things aligning. And I've been trying to get a job meantime, full time, like somewhere else while I was building my business, because my idea is, because I want to be a really successful entrepreneur, I also strongly believe that you don't need to put all of your eggs into one basket. You also need to have a safety net. And living in America, having health insurance is a great thing, which I did not have. So, and also learning more from people who understand more has always been like very important to me. Like being surrounded by people who are a lot smarter than me so that I could learn from them has been super important to me. And so I tried continuously to make it in other, like get a job, full-time job somewhere else. Meanwhile, I can continue to grow MK Medical on the side, that dual income thing. And I could actually get somebody who I had already pictured and I started coaching to put them into the role in MK so that they would take over and I would just check in on the weekends, like diversify yourself. And come March or February, I started actually hearing back from a very well-known, very, very incredibly brilliant organization that has national platform, has longevity, allows you to actually travel America, which is what I love. I love meeting folks face to face and shaking that hand of the person at the opposite end. And, funny saying that in 2020. But, I had that opportunity and this job, and we agreed, and I got the offer. And the thing is that this is how my life was lining up. February. I was having a celebratory brunch with a girlfriend of mine in the morning after a very debauchelous morning where I didn't have such a good morning earlier. So then we went to celebrate. And as I walked into the restaurant, my heel of my shoe got stuck in a rubber mat that had holes in it, which, like, that makes sense. You put a rubber mat that is actually meant for people not to slip behind the bar. You don't put this thing that has little tiny holes in it. So women like me who wear stilettos, I went flying, severely sprained my ankle, and I couldn't physically do any work for a couple of weeks. I was in a splint. I was doing physical therapy. It was all kinds of great. So I couldn't do the work at the restaurant. I couldn't do the work that physically required me to drive. It was great. But then I started healing, thankfully. And then I get this call, hey, look, like you got the job. I'm like, oh my God, yay. And so I was supposed to start with that company, that major company. I was supposed to start there in April. And meanwhile, a buddy of mine from California is like, hey, I have this project. It's for a couple of weeks. Do you want to come out to California and work this project with me? And I'm like, oh my God, stars are aligning. I am saying to the universe that I will accept, I will receive. And I've never been to California. This project seems like so much fun. I'll do it. And my lease was expiring. So I was like, this is amazing. And I was living with a roommate, and we had the most amazing apartment. It was literally created for two different people who have two separate lives. The living room was ginormous. There was what do you call it? Two separate rooms on two opposite ends of the living room. In each of those rooms, there were hallways and doors and private bathrooms and their own master bedrooms. So it was two master bedroom apartment, literally created for two different people. Like, it was perfect. But it was coming to an end. And I was actually I was in a relationship, and it was going great. And now I have this job. So I'm like, this was actually the first time I had a roommate in, I don't know, since college. Before that, I always lived alone. And now I have this job, and I have this other job lining up. I have this relationship. So I'm like, this is perfect. I put all of my stuff in storage before I go to California. My lease is going to run up in 6 weeks anyway. So I spoke with my roommate. She's like, oh my God, we're the best of friends. We have an incredible respect for each other. She's like, this is, your time. You need to go. You work your ass off. I've seen you work your ass off. And so I go to California, packing all of my life into that storage, under the impression that when I come back from California, I'm going to spend some time at my boyfriend's while I get this new apartment, which thankfully in Florida does not take long. And I will start this new job. That was March 14th. I get to California. The next day, the mayor of the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where I was staying, and I never actually made it to San Francisco, declares an emergency and a shutdown. The next day, the job where I'm supposed to work a completely separate project, which is repurposing a revenue cycle management department, which is a fancy way of saying how the money is managed in that healthcare unit, like how it comes in from the insurance payers, and actually how we send out claims. We do billing here, so we send out the claims to the insurance company, the money comes in, the explanation of benefits that tells the patient where it goes, all of this technical boring stuff, but that I love. But the project was to coach the team that is currently in place so that we can select a new associate director or an assistant director from that team to take that role. Like, that was my job there. I was supposed to build somebody up. Second day that I'm there, and this whole entire emergency is declared, we have an emergency board meeting. This is a major oncology group with several dozen locations all over San Francisco Bay Area. And they're like, yeah, that project we got you come here to do? Yeah, you're not doing that. Now your job is to figure out how to send everybody home and repurpose the whole entire department, 40 plus people, to have them go home and basically like work from home, because we're going to be working remote. Okay, no problem. Great. The kudos. This is good. Because it's a different project. I love a challenge. It's uncertain times. We know it's getting bad, but March 17th, we don't really know how bad it is, right? At least we pretend not to. 5 days after that, my boyfriend calls me, and he's been working for an international hotel chain. And he was hired by the international hotel chain to manage food and drink for the American hotels. So like, that's what his job was. He built up several hotels and their bars and their nightlife in America, and he was doing that in Miami. He's from Spain, from Catalonia, and he's a very, very like happy person with like positive outlook. He's like, hey, so I have some news, and I have 5 days to pack up my life and go back to Spain because they're shutting down all of the hotels. And if I stay here one day past the 5 days that they're giving me, I'm going to be an illegal immigrant. I have to go back to Spain. And I'm like, huh? So like this is when it starts to kick in. Like this is when the things that are happening in the world are starting to make an impact. So of course, I mean, he does what I'm in California. I can't come back there. Has so many things that he has, like packing up his life and trying to figure out how to like get back to Spain, and like and it's getting very bad in Spain at this point. His whole family is in Barcelona. So he goes to Spain and we continue talking. Then the job from Florida contacts and says, hey, unfortunately, we're going to have to rescind the offer. We can't hire anybody. Okay. A few days after that, the California job says, look, we could only keep you on for another 2 weeks because like we're shutting down a lot of projects, obviously. So, and at this point, it was now, I believe it was April 4th. It is getting very bad everywhere. And they say, our recommendation is that you need to go back to Florida now because we don't know if you'll be able to go back. Nobody knew because we already had Texas was closing its borders, Arizona was closing its borders. I'm now thinking I'm not flying back to Florida. I'm probably going to drive across the freaking continent. But how do I get there? Because now we're hearing that they're not, accepting people with a Florida driver's license and a California license plate coming out of California to pass through their 2 states if you don't have residency there. So you have to figure this out. Well, my decision was made a hell of a lot easier for me because I booked my flight to go home because I find out that it's fine to fly back home. 2 hours after that, my brother calls me and he says, you need to come home. Dad has COVID. He's going into the hospital. I change my flight from Florida. I get on the flight and I go to New York. 2 days later, my father dies. I never see him. I never speak to him. I mean, I spoke to him the day before when he was not very well. And thank God I had this voice in my head that says, take a snapshot of this FaceTime. So it's the last picture I have of my father. But when he was in the hospital, couldn't see him, couldn't get anybody to do a video chat, put the video phone in front of him, put a phone in front of him so that he could at least hear my voice and I could tell him, I love you, Daddy. None of this stuff. And the best part is that because I just got off a plane, my mother and my father live in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment. At this point, I am in New York for 24 hours, and I'm explaining to my mother, like when I get off the plane, because my father is still alive, but he's already in the hospital. I say, you cannot hug me. I cannot hug you. Like you need to stay in your room. You need to have your mask on. I just got off a plane. You might still be COVID positive. We cannot touch. Like we can't do anything. And then 24 hours later, my brother calls me and he's like, he's gone. So I'm like, I'm not telling her, you have to tell her. So I put him on, on FaceTime. I walk into her room and she's sitting on her bed. And then she gets up, she sees my brother and I'm across the room, full beekeeper suit gear, I have 2 masks on, I have like glasses on, I have something else like just to make sure. And meanwhile, for 24 hours, I am scrubbing this apartment. Like I am walking around with a bottle, Polish vodka, because we couldn't find rubbing alcohol anywhere. Leave it to the Poles. 3 bottles of 78% proof Polish vodka, which is not vodka at this point. I think it's spirit. And I am literally spraying this whole freaking apartment down and just wiping everything. And I walk into my mom's room and my brother tells her, and my mother falls, like Dad is gone. And my mother falls into her bed. And I have to stand there at the door. I cannot come to her. I cannot hug her. I cannot like physically touch my mother with the worst news of our lives. None of us can hug each other. And then, like what makes this whole entire thing even so much more worse, like I said this in the obituary, I said that COVID is a robbery. it robs us of the way that we grieve, the way that we live, the way that we mourn. We can't do anything the way that we're programmed to do. Like, and in my culture, in Jewish culture, when somebody dies, we have something called sitting Shiva. And sitting Shiva means that basically when somebody passes away in your immediate family, your only job when you're mourning is literally to sit on the floor and to, like, other people take care of you. They bring you food, they clean your house, they do your groceries, they feed you. Your job is to sit on the floor and to mourn. And then we had a major holiday that started, which was Passover. And so we can't do any of that because nobody's allowed to come over. Nobody's allowed to see you. We couldn't even see him in the funeral home. Like, we fought at the cemetery, like, you're gonna let us see him. And at the cemetery, the guys were like, we're not gonna let you see him. And I'm like, you're not hearing me. Like, first of all, legally, you don't have a leg to stand on because I have no idea that that's my father. So you're gonna let me see him. So we're literally fighting over my dead father's grave, like literally fighting over my dead father's grave. Like, he's not even in the grave yet, actually. He's still in the casket. I'm like, you're going to open up that casket and I'm going to see my father. And they're like, we're not going to do that. And I'm like, I don't give a shit. You're going to do that. And literally this back and forth over my father's body. Finally, I was like, okay, one more time. Let me hear you. Understand. You need to understand me. I don't know that that's my father. I'm not signing off that the man I'm putting into the ground is my father until you let me see him. So they allowed one by one me to come alone, my mother to come alone, my brother to come alone to see him, and my cousin to come alone and see him. That's it. So like at the cemetery, there was only 7 people. It was me, my mother, my brother, my cousin, my best friend from childhood, and a few of my brother's friends from childhood. That's it. Nobody else came. And we were even surprised that they let that many people in because this was the height of everything. So when I say that I'm thankful for COVID, it kind of seems like an oxymoron, right? Because you're like, you were robbed of your father, you were robbed of a grieving process. How the flip are you thankful for it? It kind of reinvigorated everything that I've been seeing in my professional career because I've been in it on the administrative side. I've almost been killed by a hospital once about 15 years ago because they left me on the emergency room floor hooked up to an IV, and I woke up 6 hours later looking, the IV was still completely full, and I had just like dried blood going on my arm. Like, nobody walked up to me. Nobody in the 6 hours that I was in the emergency room walked up to me, and this was about 12 or 15 years ago. So like, I've had the patient experience in me all along, but now, you know, and I've had it, the administrative experience and understanding how much extra work there is for administrators. And because there's a lack of adoption of technology in our industry, all of these things completely fired me up so much that I'm like, if we learn nothing from this, then we don't deserve to freaking be here. Like, let COVID come and cleanse the earth. Because if we don't accept that we need to actually do something about this in the industry that is, by the way, 1/3 of our GDP in America, and yet we have shit for nothing outcomes. We have lower maternal patient outcomes than they do in Sudan. Like, somebody needs to explain that to me because I cannot wrap my brain around that. And forget about, you know, Caucasian deaths. Like, think about African American and people of color deaths during maternal fetal metrics. Like, that's just insane to me that the richest country in the world has that. But again, that's because all of the decisions, of course it's my viewpoint only, but all of the decisions about the way that we approach care in this country has never been from designing it for the patient experience or not or and understanding that the patient is a consumer. When you go and you buy a car, what are you doing? You're buying a freaking car. What are you? You are a consumer. You purchase a product. I want to get a phone. I'm going to decide if I want an iPhone or if I want a Samsung or if I want something else. That industry, tech industry understands that I'm a consumer. I have a voice. I have a decision. It will cater its plans to me. It will cater its features to me. If I come into a car dealership, it's going to cater what, like I have a Nissan Sentra. I'm perfectly happy with it. That Nissan Sentra is a 2020 Nissan Sentra with the body of an old Nissan Altima from like 5 years ago. But it's made it for the customer experience. So now it's a tricked out Nissan Sentra that looks like, like 5 years ago would have looked like a BMW or something. And that's okay, because all of these things are designed for the patient experience. When we talk about healthcare in America, what patient experience? What technological advancements? If it wasn't for COVID, we would still be filling out 10,000 documents on paper in the doctor's office. We would be telling our story on the document, then to the nurse practitioner, then to the physician assistant, then to the doctor, who still would have probably maintained approximately 2 minutes of this whole entire time maintaining eye contact, because all the doctor is doing is just looking at this chart while like, oh, so I see that you have come in here for blah 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 blah. Like, what? This is not a patient experience. So the fact that I never had an opportunity to say goodbye to my father, and now I understand that the hospitals were severely overwhelmed. I'm not insensitive to that. I get it. They were they were thrown into the trenches of World War III in those hospitals. But because we never anticipated the patient experience from the beginning, these things were never set in place. So the fact that there was never an opportunity for me to begging to see my father, and I understand I'm not allowed in the hospital, then put on your fucking phone and let me see him. Let me say goodbye to him. Let him hear my voice. Let him hear his wife's voice. Let him hear his granddaughter's voice. Let him hear us. He might not physically be there anymore, but who are you to take that right away from us? So my drive is so invigorated to have this conversation and to take it. I don't pretend to have all the answers. I have an idea of how it could work, and it's a very, very simple idea. All that you do is you take, oh, wrong piece of paper. You take a piece of paper and you just have a linear line. That's all you do. Just take a line. Write down the line like a ruler. Point number one is, where do you believe the patient experience begins? And if you are the person starting the private practice, if you are the person that is starting the physician group, if you are the person that is running the hospital, you're going to start realizing that answer is going to be different, but start writing it down. And everything about that process, that patient experience that starts to come down, you know how you have 0, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. It's really not that difficult of a concept. For every 5, write down what happens along that journey. And then when you're putting that down and you're like, wait a minute, could this be simplified? Can this be technologically improved? Can we remove this step? Is this an extra step? Does this somehow mess with the actual administration that is on the front desk? Can we remove something from the administration? Is this going to help the patient experience? Is this going to bring down the cost of the services? Is this going to increase the value and the quality metrics of what we do? Is this going to help save and help the patient thrive? Is this going to make a happy customer? Is this customer going to talk about us to their friends? Is this customer going to leave a positive review? Is this customer going to come back and be a happy customer later on if, God forbid, something goes on? Instead of driving that customer to consistently come back over and over and over again, because our system is built for volume instead of value. Where can we renegotiate with our healthcare partners in insurance companies so that we can drive the value up and the volume down and increase quality? When we start having that kind of I know it seems like it's so simple, right? You're like, why? But it's when we start having that kind of a conversation and we start actually like seeing it on paper as a freaking line that's like, wait, this is on top of each other, then we need to bring it down and see what we can remove, whatever that it is. We start designing the perfect, easy, simple, clean, clear patient experience. If we're in the hospital, do we have phones available to have this patient see their family? If this patient cannot move their hands, if this patient is linked up to the tubes, and if their family is overseas in another state, in another city, if there's a pandemic, can we have a nurse, patient advocate, whoever, bring that phone to that patient and let the family say goodbye? What? It's really not that difficult of a concept. And thanks to COVID, we've started adapting it. I just wish we started doing it 20 years ago. So that's kind of like my very long-winded answer of, I think, 45 minutes to your question.
I mean, it explains a lot, and obviously you can hear the passion, you can hear the vulnerability there. It's there's a lot behind this for you, really, isn't there?
Oh God, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I honest to God think that if I did not have my therapist last year, I don't know. I am definitely not like anywhere close to, like I am fine now. Like, no, I mean, I just been blessed to be numb most of last year. Like, that's a feeling too that I learned to discover. I'm like, my therapist, like, how are you feeling today? I'm like, I'm fine. And she's like, okay, but like, do you feel anger? Do you feel remorse? Do you feel frustration? And I'm like, no, I'm numb. She's like, that's a feeling too. I'm like, it is? That's a feeling? Numbness is a feeling? She's like, yeah. She's like, what did you expect? Your life turned upside down in a matter of 2.5 weeks, where all of these things that you had building in your life were literally ripped apart. Like, and you expect to have all of these different emotions, and then of course in the middle of all of this, life gets in the way, and there's all of these other things that are happening now, thanks to the pandemic, thanks to the fact that you are your your mother's primary caretaker now, because that's what your father was doing. So like, you have all of these things, and it's like, yeah. Things are going to be dirty, they're going to be messy, they're going to be broken, and it's okay to be numb. And I was saying, like, I look forward to the possible nervous breakdown that I might have after COVID, because there's one thing I know, and I say this with nothing but love and respect and admiration. Like, we know that we're on the cusp of a post-traumatic stress disorder theme for our front. Right now, they're still in the trenches. So the soldier does not have a PTSD episode when the soldier is at war. When does the soldier get a PTSD episode? When he comes home. They're still in the trenches. Our health system is still in the trenches. My cousin is a nurse at a hospital here in Brooklyn. And yesterday she told me her whole entire floor is COVID positive. The whole entire floor. There's now nurses, once again, that have already been infected. She lost several nurses to COVID on her floor during the year. Like, they passed away. So we understand that there's so much trauma going on all over, that I don't think that we are allowing ourselves right now to have that moment of grief, because we're like in the trenches, and we're like, let's get through this, and once and when things kind of calm down, like, I'm very pro vaccination, and I will be the first in that damn line. Like, stick me wherever you're gonna stick me, just like so I could give somebody a hug. Like, I would like physical contact. Like, that's for me in my 5 love languages. Physical touch is very important. And the fact that I had to deliver the most heart-wrenching news of my life and not hug anybody when I did that, yeah, I will be in that line getting that vaccine so that I could hug everybody that I know. So, like I understand that I'm not, I've processed, I know he's gone. I visited him, I talked to him, I spoke to him on the New Year's Day, and I spoke to him on my birthday. But I'm not fully, I think, in the grieving because I haven't really had the anger yet. So I know that it's coming. It's just really not there yet because it's on the back burner. It's like, you need to get through this. You need to figure out a way to take care of your family and, like, reestablish everything that you're doing and really, really drive home what you're trying to achieve before you actually get to that sweet spot of a possible nervous breakdown or, like that anger and the crying that comes with it. So I know it's coming, and obviously I embrace it because it's a part of life. But there is a lot there, but it's kind of a catch-22 because of that. I've had this opportunity to rebuild my relationship with my mom because I lived in Florida for 8 years. So, I spoke to her on the phone every day. Yeah, sure. But like, it's not the same, like we didn't have the best relationship growing up. I didn't understand her. She didn't understand me. Like, there was a lot of miscommunication between us coming from a Soviet family. Like, there were certain things that were never said. You don't show your emotions, like all of these Iron Curtain things that are, cliches, and especially coming from a Jewish family, which is like, by 22 years old, you're not married. What is wrong with you? Like, why don't you have children? Why are you not a doctor? Why are you not a nurse? Like, till this day, my family doesn't have one slightest idea of what I do for a living. And that's okay. I've stopped fighting it. I'm like, one day they'll see it. One day they will understand. But my father does, because he's up there now, and he's, oh, this is what she does for a living. Okay, this is interesting. But I'm still happy that which is such an oxymoron. Like, my dad had to pass away so that I could come home and take care of my mom and rebuild our relationship. But if I focus just on the negative, my dad was taken away from me. He was stolen. Then I don't fully appreciate or embrace the fact that it gave me an opportunity to be with my mother and to rebuild our relationship and to become closer, and for me to help her, for me to take care of her. Like, how many people get to say that? So, it's like, depends on which tunnel you go into to see the light at the end of that tunnel.
Do people get you?
Wait, what? Do they get me? Yes, they do, but I don't know. I've really started focusing on delivering my message a lot more over the past couple of weeks, because what I had just done was I've immersed myself in my work, of course, as a grieving process. So I've been leading therapy book clubs. Like, I manage a group of therapists online that has now over 12,000 therapists. And I teach in those, I've taught 2 books. One is, you might be familiar with this, The Body Keeps the Score by Dr. Bessel van der Kolk. And if you're not, Lord, read this book. Mind explosion. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk talks about the impact of trauma in whatever age stage of your life it happens, how it actually has physical proof of living within your cells, and how it could manifest years later on. It is, and the best part is that even though he's an international world-known psychiatrist, and he has done some insane work over the years, the book is meant to be written by everyday folks. Like, you could be a 12-year-old reading this book and you'll get it. I think that's the key to a successful therapy book. If you write it at a 4th grade level, people will get it. Like, you need to write it really simple, but still convey your message. And so, yeah, this book, I taught it to the therapists, and then I got to interview him last year. But I started realizing that, as passionate as I am about mental health and about helping therapists thrive and launch private practices, I realized an opportunity. I started teaching every Thursday. I started actually speaking about ways that they can improve their private practices. What can they do to fix that experience for themselves and for their patients? And then I really started realizing more and more and more, I need to talk more about the patient experience. And like, this happened to me. I was a patient that was almost killed by a hospital 12 years ago. And then B, my father was taken away from me without the patient experience design. And C, all of these providers, these therapists, or OBGYN, these folks that are my clients, that contact me for helping them launch private practices or launch teletherapy practices or get credentialed or contracted with an insurance company, like, they come to me because they leave something else. So they're already programmed to think differently. And my fun job of like pulling up my sleeves and, taking the kid gloves off is like helping them reframe their brain in a way where, I get it, you were taught one way, and now we get to do some reverse work, because you're going to have to acknowledge, if you want to work with me, we're going to have to start understanding the alternatives of bombarding your patient with paperwork that is physical, and seeing how we can leverage technology. How can we renegotiate with the insurance payers? A couple of weeks ago, actually, you had a very fun call. A major upcoming mental health group, who is not going to be named, they have hundreds of providers, of therapists all over America. They reached out to me and they said, hey, look, you were recommended by somebody to build relationships with insurance payers. And we checked you out. You seem legit. But so this is what we want to do. The insurance companies don't know that we exist. Right now, we're just cash based, and we've built this network. And we want to negotiate with them, and we want to get the biggest bang for our buck. We want to negotiate contracts where we get the highest reimbursement for every single service that we deliver. I say, okay, great. Thanks so much for reaching out. So you're saying that you want a fee for service contract? He's like, yeah, I guess. I don't really know what that means. So I explain what fee for service is, which is exactly what we've been doing in America for the past several decades, driving the cost of care based on volume. The more things you do to the patient, the more you get reimbursed. The longer the time, the more you get reimbursed. Absolutely no incentives, no metrics, no value, nothing about that speaks to what happens to the patient or their better being. So I say, I explain all of this, and he's like, oh, okay, so that sounds really good. I'm like, yeah, it does sound great, right? I don't think I'm the right person for you. He's like, what do you mean? But you know about this? I'm like, yeah, because I actually fundamentally believe that fee-for-service system is destroying this country, and it is not the way that healthcare needs to be moving. Actually, in physical therapy, in OBGYN, and in other specialties, for years now, we've been moving into a value-based contract, which is negotiating a contract with the insurance company based on incentives and metrics that the provider can meet with the patient, thereby improving that patient's quality of life, actually having measurable outcomes, and driving down the cost of care from the insurance company, because it's not just the insurance company that has to pay for your services. The patient has to pay, because the patient's probably going to have a copay. He's going to have a co-insurance, a deductible, all of these additional things that is just, it doesn't make any sense. So I started talking a little bit more about the value of, contract negotiation. And he's like, I didn't anticipate this conversation to turn the way that it is. You've actually challenged me, and nobody has done that before. And I'm like, okay. like, what do you, like, I just took that, and I'm like, okay. He's like, I want to get you on the phone with, our other person, our other partner, and like, if you could explain this to him. So then a couple of weeks went by, and we had this conversation, and I explained more in further detail and provided additional value, gave them some educational information. This happened, like, I think a day before New Year's. And so he's like, I don't think about it. Like, I don't know how true that statement is, that they weren't aware of any of this information. Like, I'm sure that they knew some of that stuff, but the fact is that I repeated myself, and I said, look, if you want the volume, if you want the fee for service, I'm not the right person for you. Like, I get it that it would have probably been a hell of a lot of money. It probably would have given me health insurance, but it's like, I'm not going to do something. And there goes my dog. I'm not going to do something that's going to go against what I believe in. It's just, like I said, never let a good crisis go to waste. We saw from COVID that we need to take an opportunity in investing in ourselves, and especially improving healthcare, removing those administrative burdens, and trying to see how we could fix it from the perspective of the patient. And if we're moving back into fee for service, we're not doing shit for the patient. Is that simple? So the reception, to answer your question, is how are people understanding it? Those that need to understand it and want to understand it do. Those that are too comfortable in the old system don't. And it's not my job to change them. I'm here to get the message out. If I can, talk on a national platform, to have a conversation again with people that are a hell of a lot smarter than me about this, to start driving this message home weekly, then let me do that. If I could do it one person at a time, one clinician at a time, one insurance company at a time, let me keep doing that. As long as the message gets delivered that we need to redesign healthcare from the patient experience, move away from volume to value, thereby increasing and improving the patient experience, then we're going to get there. It's not going to be like we've had the catalyst, which is COVID. So thank you for that. Thank you, Mother Nature. Now it's up to us. Now we need to catch along. So there's going to be a lot of people that are going to resist. I actually had a conversation with an incredibly brilliant person a couple of weeks ago. And you know how you say, do people get me? This person is an industry veteran. I mean, they have been in the healthcare industry since the 90s, doing things that are absolutely incredible, very, very good things. Let's just put it that way. And we had this conversation, and I was saying how, we need literally everything that I just said to you. And in response, the person says to me, yeah, but like, what are you saying, that we're going to stop paying physicians for healthcare? What do you want this to turn into Soviet Russia? And I'm like, it's like there's a certain point where we can't overturn each other politically, right? So we can't when I hear a statement like that, it kind of sounds like it's one of those things where it's like, no matter what I say to this person, they're just not going to accept it. And I'm like, I tried, and I said, look, things are changing. Healthcare industry is changing. We are moving away from fee for service, and we're moving into value. Like that's where it's going, and it's going to go into every single specialty, not just OBGYN, not just physical therapy. It's going to go into mental health. It's going to go into psychiatry. It's going to go into neurology. Like people are going to start wanting and demanding metrics because patients are becoming a hell of a lot smarter. They're understanding that if they go to that they need to look at two different physicians to understand which one of them is better. And if somebody tells them that they need a surgery, if they're a millennial, they're going to find out if that's actually true, because they are going to go and get a second opinion. So, things are moving away from that old way. So we need to kind of embrace it and see how we can hop on and help guide the process. And what can we do to still, I'm not saying that we're going to go into a communist system. Like, I'm not saying that. I understand that fear. But I also understand that every single civilized country in this world has some sort of socialized medicine. What that looks like is completely different. Case point, Ireland. It's just like I studied health systems in Germany, in England, in the UK, in Thailand, in Asia, in Bangkok, and I mean all over. And they all have different ways. I think what I really love is what Germany was doing, which is like it has the National Health Insurance Fund, right? Like you have your health insurance, but then you also have these additional side insurances that you could do for these other things, like some kind of an additional service. And I believe they have that in France as well. So, and in America, I'm like, everybody that starts screaming that they're so afraid of socialized medicine, I'm like, you're so against that term, but yet you hunch on and clamp on to your Medicare like it's God's light. And what do you think Medicare is? That's the oldest form of government insurance that we have in this country. Actually, it's not. TRICARE is the oldest. And TRICARE is socialized medicine in a way, which is our health insurance for our troops in America. So it's like, shift the mindset and start saying, like, there's still room for insurance companies in this world. I'm not saying that we get rid of insurance company. I'm not. I actually think that we need to start using them more and partnering with them more to show up to support their consumers, their clients, because it's time for them to wake up as well. And they are, slowly but surely, but it's an exciting time in healthcare, I think. And so the ones that do need to get me will, and the ones that don't want to get me, okay, that's okay too. I'm not here to fix every single person's mindset. I'm here to get the conversation going, share my vision, redesign the patient experience, see how we can improve the healthcare system, and start asking the right questions, because they're going to be different for every single specialty and every single health system, because we have so many different ones.
What's your why? I mean, I sort of get it on a surface level. I get it, but what's deeper down? What's your why?
It has been my why. I've been the patient that has been left alone. I've been in this industry for 23 years, and I see the things that are wrong with it. So I don't want to turn my back after seeing what's wrong with it and being intimately involved in it, to not dare to do anything about it. Like, I don't want to be on the sidelines and just accepting the hits as they come. The system is too top heavy. I don't want any clinicians to burn out because they're stuck doing administrative work. I don't want healthcare administrators to burn out because they're doing so much more work than they need to. And I don't want the patient to feel forgotten, because the patient deserves better. The patient is a consumer and they deserve to embrace that power. So my why is because we deserve clarity. Like, I know I said that that's my word for 2021, but even 2 years ago, when I created my mission for MK Medical Solutions, it was simple. It came to me also like that, vision of the word success, to provide clarity in changing healthcare. That has been my mission written on my website for 2 years. That's been my personal mission that I try to achieve. And I think that has to, like, we cannot not provide clarity in changing healthcare, because what are we doing as a society to better ourselves? So my why is to provide. I want to, I need to, I feel it in my bones. I feel it, like, it drives me. If I don't, I don't feel fulfilled. If I don't try to do something about changing the way we approach healthcare in this country, I feel like the past 23 years, I might have as well been an accountant, which I'm not saying that that's not a good job, but I'm just saying, like, it's not for me. Like, why have I been in the trenches and understanding how things work from different perspectives and different kinds of healthcare systems, whether it's an OBGYN, physical therapy, whether I am doing startup, whether I'm doing revenue cycle management, like all of the managing contracts, like, why have I been given this little access, this platform to learn everything, if I don't try to improve it? Like, what's the point? So I want to improve it. Like, that excites me. I want to improve it. I need to improve it. I need to do something to reshape that conversation. Can I do it for the country? No, I'm not, like, I'm not responsible for the whole entire country. But if I can get my voice out there, and if I could start having this conversation, and then more people can really like, oh, wait a minute, yeah, you know what, actually that makes sense. We need to redesign the patient experience. What does that look like? Then, you know, we need to provide clarity in changing healthcare. It is too freaking confusing. Like, let me ask you this question. When you go to your doctor, after you visit your doctor, do you get anything in the mail in terms of financial statements from your, yeah, okay. Oh, I just ripped it up. I just had an explanation of benefits. We call them explanation of benefits. So an explanation of benefits is basically a document that you get from your insurance company that tells you every single thing that was done to you by the clinician, whether you're in the hospital, if it's like everybody that came across you, or it's like one particular doctor. It'll say what was done to you, how much was paid, and how much is your responsibility. If this happens to not be Medicare and it happens to be a commercial insurance, the document gets a little bit more complicated. And even in the explanation benefits, like when you're reading it, there's all of these additional codes that mark, and you look at number 9 and you go down to like where the appendix is and you read what number 9 is. And like, I keep hearing this from my friends. My friends will call me like, can you help me understand what the hell this says? Because this is not English. Like, I found out my health insurance benefits. I knew that we were covered, and now I have this bill for $4,000. Like, what the hell is going on? And I take one look at it and I see that the clinician that saw them when they were in the emergency room was out of network with their health insurance. Like, this is the most typical thing that we hear. But my point of why I ask you this question is, when the patient needs a bloody dictionary and an additional third party to understand why they are billed and why what they have already paid is not enough, something's broken. Like, you shouldn't need, I saw that you had the patient advocate, the nurse, and she was so brilliant. But like, oh gosh, I forgot her name now. She was on your show a couple of weeks ago. Oh my gosh, I forget her name. But she was a nurse practitioner and she was a patient advocate. And I mean, she nailed it, right? Like, there's too many silos. There's too many like tunnel vision for each direction you go into. And it's too freaking broken. And it should not be that way. Like, it's just, it's irritating. It is so irritating. Like, we can make it better. And here's the thing. It's great that people like her exist. My caveat is they shouldn't need to exist. Like, it should not be so bloody complicated that when you get the damn statement and then you're going to get another one, and then you're going to get an additional statement from your doctor, because you're going to get a document from the health insurance company, and then you're going to get a document from your doctor that's going to tell you some other crap that the insurance company didn't send you yet, because there's so much disconnect in between the way that the money goes that not everybody is on the same page. It's just, we have a great country, we have a great healthcare system, but it is fundamentally broken, and it could do so much better to learn from our cousins across the pond.
Where you're at today, I mean, if you were to say, give us a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan, what would it be?
Ooh, love it. I have a national platform where I have a conversation and that gets into everybody's living room on the weekends, where I talk to people that are a hell of a lot smarter than me about ways of improving the healthcare system and considering the patient experience throughout the whole entire time. And it's some kind of a show where I talk to these folks and we get onto this journey and we help reshape the conversation. And it's not just held in the metropolises where these conversations are starting to take place, but it's mostly happening in rural areas as well, where they really need to take place, but it's so backwards because there's just not that much evolution in terms of technological advancements and helping improve the patient experience and the patient quality outcomes and things like that. So I have that kind of a show, that platform where I talk about this nationally, and I talk to folks about this. I help and I built a team at MK Medical Solutions that is capable of addressing these things. And I partner with different organizations, whether they be hospital or physician or mental health providers, that support this vision, that do see the importance of reevaluating the patient experience and actually redesigning their healthcare business based on the patient experience. Those are the kinds of organizations that I see being attracted to work with me in whatever capacity that looks like, whatever that trip looks like. So that's kind of, it might not be that clear because I've really started to redesign my 5-year plan over the past couple of weeks, starting to hone in to really like what I want and what I think I need to do. And I definitely feel like there is an opportunity here for me to have that kind of a conversation.
Well, it's good. I mean, to obviously to be able to put that mission out there, and it's getting a balance, I suppose. I mean, in general, would you be pain driven or pleasure driven as a person? Which way do you lie?
Oh, that's a really good question. Pleasure driven, simply because for me, like, physical touch is one of my 5 languages, but also words of affirmation. So hearing folks say that you've helped me, it's like, hallelujah. Actually, when I was teaching the classes of The Body Keeps the Score and the polyvagal theory, I had a few therapists that came up to me. Now, I full disclosure, let everybody know every time I open up my mouth that I am not a therapist. What I say is I'm a healthcare industry insider who is a healthcare implementation consultant who has been on the administrative side of running a healthcare business for over 23 years. For some reason, they might not hear that. And I still have people coming up to me from those groups. They're like, I've been looking for a supervisor. Would you supervise me? And I'm like, I am not a therapist. But that's a compliment to me. And then when I hear folks coming up to me, like, you help me understand how to how to reshape and redesign my private practice in a way that I never imagined could be possible. Like, that to me is the biggest pleasure, because that's such an awesome compliment. Like, I helped you, really? Yay! So that to me is awesome. Now, is that going to change when I complete my therapy journey several years down the line after the loss of my father? I don't know, because that so far has been like pushing me this year, right? Because of that patient experience. It's definitely been a push. So it's a pain. But I still think I'm more pleasure driven, just because I love knowing that I've helped somebody. Like, hearing from folks like, you've helped me reframe my mindset and be more open to other ideas of how to thrive in a private practice and not be bombarded or killed by it. So that to me is super awesome and important. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's sort of it's always just knowing, it's that split, and because traditionally, I suppose, and even in the pain thing, like, insurance is expensive until we need it, right? It's that thing of going, why not live life to the full? And then, but circumstance, something happens, life changes, and suddenly you're on your knees praying that everything's going to be okay, and you kind of, it's the balance too. And it's, I suppose, when you get to the healthcare side, you go, and how do you get the best of both? It's, do you try and be involved in the life before things get bad to try and justify the cost, or to try and reduce the risk in the first place? Or do you, and you talked about the patient journey, where does it start? Where does it? I mean, it's, there's a bit of an Irish joke that's just come into my head. It's the usual thing of, who looks after them? Is it, some people go from the cradle to the grave, and then some people go from the inception to the resurrection, and it's kind of, where does healthcare actually touch? Where is the touch points? And I get it, listen, without getting into the politics of it, it's like the healthcare has been where they've been, but also people, do they love pain? They're certainly motivated more by pain.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah,
you're
because they feel it.
you're trying to run run that seesaw from them and saying, well, I want you to be really happy and have a great life, but actually I know you're going to come into pain and you're going to, you're going to want to do anything to get rid of it. But yet that's going to suck away all your pleasure because of the cost. And, and it is that, and then the physical scale of the system and how do you become efficient, because it's what feels like there's a couple of foxes in the chicken run, because there's insurance companies, and why would they possibly want to treat you quicker? And yes, of course you needed those extra treatments because yeah, it's a funny one, isn't it, really?
It is, but that's why I think, again, like I take it back to, look, I understand that my ideas, and I can't say that they're just mine. Obviously, I'm not the only person in America who's talking about reframing healthcare. Like Dr. Zeph Newworth is a brilliant human being that I hope you get to talk to. He actually has a book called Reframing Healthcare. And when I was reading, I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been saying. Like, there's another human being who is so much more smarter than me, and he actually puts it down into perspective. This is awesome. But, like, you said something that actually I'm happy you said, because I forgot to mention it. I also have this fundamental idea of when you are designing the patient experience, like when Dr. Bessel van der Kolk said the body and mind connection, like whatever happens to you in trauma could manifest, will manifest itself physically throughout your life. So like he talks about this journey of a patient that he's been treating over 30 years, who first came to him as a PTSD person because he was in the Korean War. I think it was Korean War. And so the person had some kind of manifestations. And then like 10 years later, there was another thing. And then 10 years later, there was another thing. But the point is that when we address the patient, there shouldn't be a reason why we don't address the mental well-being of that patient. So if the gastroenterologist is treating a patient for some kind of an ailment within their gut, we say a lot of times that we have two souls and we have two hearts, right? We have the heart that's like in here in our chest, and then we have another heart or a brain in our gut. Because like when we feel like violently sick or repulsed by something, when we see a scary movie or we get butterflies in our stomach, like there's a reason why there's a saying that what is that saying in English? I know we have it in Russian, but it's like the path to a man's soul is through his stomach or his heart is through his stomach. Like, so there shouldn't be a reflective, like, no, leave the mental health to the mental health. Like bring in the mental health professionals and help them partner with the OBGYN doc, so that maybe if that patient is experiencing infertility and they're coming to you for the infertility treatment, you can say, by the way, while we work with you, Karen is down the street. She is a specialist who specializes in female trauma or women struggling with infertility. Like that's her niche. And she is a great therapist that I recommend my patients to. So let's start building these integrative relationships between OBGYNs and mental health, or oncologists and mental health. Like, Lord, if you're going through oncology, why are you not seeing a therapist? That's when you're at your like weakest, lowest, most painful point of your life. So why are we not recommending these relationships? So I hope that we build systems that actually align therapists, like other psychologists, psychiatrists, any kind of a mental health professional with these other specialists. And when we start doing that, then we are actually approaching the patient experience, because then the patient is going to be supported in mind and body. So I'm all for vertical integration, not just horizontal integration. Like, meaning I'm all for building these integrated clinical delivery networks where we have mental health professionals partnering with specialists, and then particularly for mental health professionals, for them to stop trying to treat every single mental health condition on the face of this planet. Because we have this website called Psychology Today. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but when you're looking, it's like where a lot of folks go to find the therapist. They go into Psychology Today, they put in their zip code, and they get an answer of a bunch of therapists that are there. Now, the millennial ones are starting to get a little bit more into this. The older, actually, I should rephrase that, across the gambit, not just millennials, because there are older generation therapists who are understanding this. Like, but a lot of times you're going to go in and you're going to see specialties that I deal with: ADHD, substance abuse, childhood trauma, physical trauma, amputation, like all of these things. And I'm like, do you really actually specialize in all of that? Or are you just trying to be a revolving door that gets everybody who wants to see a therapist coming into your practice? Because if that's what you're doing, then guess what? You are not fulfilling the patient experience, because you are not specializing and honing in on that niche that you are trying to do. Like, you know, a child psychiatrist or a child psychologist is not going to go and see a geriatric patient. They shouldn't. Why? Because their niche and their specialty is child psychiatry or child psychology. So let's keep doing that. And of course, when folks come from agency, which is where they start after they get out of college, after they graduate, they go into an agency where they see a whole gambit of different kinds of folks. And like, well, you know what? Use that. Understand who you identified with more, and then you'll know who you want to work with more, and then start building out your practice. So this is something else I help them with. Let's start defining who your why is. Why did you choose to become a therapist? And who your target patient is. And then once we know that, we'll start leveraging relationships with the right kind of referral partners from your area. So if you work with battered women, you should be talking to OBGYN providers. If you are working with women who have, if you specialize with women who had breast augmentation surgery and, they're just like now starting to come back into what it is to be a woman, then you should be talking to oncologists. If you are a therapist who works with childhood trauma, you should definitely be talking to pediatricians, and start building those relationships, and then start seeing and exploring ways of redefining your relationship with the health insurance company based on the metrics that you could deliver when you partner with somebody else across the street. And get this, health insurance companies are actually not that resistant to this. They just need to see the data. They need to see the numbers of what you can do for them in terms of your analytics. So you can, what you anticipate is going to happen from this relationship. And they're open to have this conversation. They actually are open to have these conversations because they're having them with Cleveland Clinic. They're having these conversations with Kaiser Permanente. They're having these conversations with Baptist Health. They are having these conversations. They're just not having it with small mom and pop shops. So let's change that. Let's have those conversations. And then we could definitely start feeling more that we are reshaping this health system of ours, because Lord knows we freaking deserve it. I don't want to ever wake up in a hospital room again, looking up at the goddamn ceiling and seeing the IV drip that never was turned on, and looking at my arm and seeing dried blood crackling from my hand and being severely dehydrated and trying to get the attention of anybody that would pass me, and everybody ignoring me. I was so dehydrated. I didn't have a voice because I was so dehydrated. And finally, I took all the strength that I had to hold on to the metal thing, the metal thing that holds on to your IV drip. And I just said, if somebody doesn't, because I had no voice, if somebody doesn't come up to me right now to look at my IV drip, I am going to sue every single person that I laid my eyes out. And I fell back. And then all of a sudden the nurse comes up to me, oh, your IV drip is not turned on. Why didn't you say something? And I'm like, I've been lying in your emergency room for 6 hours and I needed to say something to you while I've been passed out. There's something wrong there. There's something severely wrong with that picture. So.
Stepping back before the system, for whatever reason, is where it is today, I mean, what was the original premise and the original mission?
didn't have one, because I've been just like, go, 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 like fix it, work, fix it, work, fix it, work. I was a worker bee. I burnt out several times in the healthcare industry. I was hospitalized once because I was burned out. I had a stress-induced vertigo episode, and I had nobody to blame but myself, because my employer saw that I'm not going to say no, and I'm just going to keep taking all the work. And I was working 4 consecutive 100-hour weeks, sleeping 2-3 hours a night. And I just kept doing it. And I never said no. So of course they're not stupid. They see that I'm doing the job of 15 people. They're going to let me keep doing it. And I thought, because of the way that I'm programmed from my upbringing, that, you know, we're hard workers, we never say no, we never step back from work. Like we prove that we are worth, and, you know, call it an immigrant mindset, call it a Russian, Soviet, Ukrainian, Jewish mindset. I don't care what you call it, but it comes from that Iron Curtain feeling of, you must prove that you can do everything and you never back down from job, you know, like that's been the feeling. And then that landed me in a hospital with a stress-induced vertigo episode. I thought I was having a stroke because I lost momentary functions of my speech. Like the doctor was saying, what do you feel? And I was like this because I couldn't keep my body straight, like, because vertigo is like, you know, you're disbalanced completely. And I was like I couldn't even form sentences. So I'm like in my mind, like, I'm having a stroke. I'm 30 years old and I am having a stroke. Like, okay, this is great, you know. And then they're like, after 9 hours of being in the hospital running every single test on the face of the planet, they said to me, you had a stress-induced vertigo episode. I'm like, a what? I didn't even know what the hell that was. Like, I didn't think it was a thing. But, you know, I didn't really have something that moved me. I just did. And if you think I learned my lesson after that, I didn't. Because 6 months later, I kept working 100 hours a week again, like for the same employer, because I had this inherent ability, not ability, but drive to just to prove that I'm, you know, that I can do it. That this drive to just fix something and put my hands on it. And now I'm more a little bit like laid back, I think. And I acknowledge when I start overworking, I'm like, I'm gonna back up a little bit. And if I take on too much, I'm gonna respectfully, casually walk away. You know, very hard lesson learned, but still learning it. Think I'll be learning it for the rest of my life.
Who were you, or who do you sort of set out to please?
Ooh. I don't know how to answer that question, because I was never really understood by my family and my career choices in childhood. Like whenever I would speak, there was not a lot of understanding. I was the odd child out. Like I didn't conform like everybody else. I didn't stay home instead of going away to college. I wasn't quiet. Like my voice traveled a lot. It still does. So I don't know if I set out to please my parents as much as I set out to be understood. And I wanted to be understood, whoever that was for, whoever would listen.
What were you trying to say at that point, you know?
No, just all that I remember is like conversations with their, like, you know, like, we don't understand you. Like, why can't you be like other kids? Like, why can't you just listen? And I would not. I think I was very rambunctious, and I had a lot more of like a male alpha personality, which was not at all accepted by my culture. Very like, you know, you need to be a lady and you need to be quiet and you need to like not speak until spoken to. And I'm like, hell no, it's not at all what I'm about. I am going to speak my mind. And if you don't understand me, then that's too bad. And then you will need to understand me because I want you to understand me, but you don't understand me.
Yeah, it's always interesting. I mean, what did you originally want to do when you grew up? What was the original plan?
Fashion designer. I wanted to be a fashion designer. I answered that really quickly, huh?
Yeah.
Because I started sewing when I was 3. First memory I have of childhood is sewing. I was 3 years old and I was sewing. I even went to fashion school, but not to be a fashion designer, to be a fashion merchandiser. And meanwhile, this whole time I was in healthcare. Like, I started in healthcare in high school. I started working for a medical office in 1997. Meanwhile, I still was like trying to make it in the fashion business. I have an undergraduate degree from SUNY Oneonta and FIT, which is Fashion Institute of Technology, in fashion merchandising management. I love the business side of it, and I understood really early on that I don't have the creative skill with like my pen. Like, I'm not a great artist and I can't really draw the stick figures the way that they would, but I had these ideas in my head about the fashion business. So I even worked in the fashion industry, but all the while I was working in the fashion industry, on the side I was still in healthcare. So when I finally was like, okay, I'm not into this fashion industry like anymore, I just went back to healthcare because I knew it. It came easy to me. And then I started listening to it. I'm like, well, wait a minute. No matter what I do in healthcare, like, there's so many things that I can do. I could be an administrator, I could be a biller, I could be a credentialer, I could, start a private practice one day, maybe. I can do and there's just so much. So I just went back to healthcare. Even though I wanted to be a fashion designer, even though I wanted to get into the fashion industry, and I tried. I did. I worked in the heart of Manhattan, 39th and Broadway, in one of the fashion houses, um, for an international fashion company. But it didn't excite me. Like, I'm like, this is not what I thought it was gonna be. Like, I had these ideas, like, of how glamorous the fashion industry was, and I was like, I think I'm gonna go back to healthcare because that seems like a little bit more excitement, and it did. So I went back to healthcare. I went full time to the job that I was doing part time.
It's amazing, yeah, this is the journey that we go on. I'm struck sort of almost fashion merchandising and that whole thing. I think there probably is some sort of a connection with the sort of the medical field, if you like, whether it be sort of garments, designs, merchandising, stock, pleasing, obviously different product, but similar. What do you want to wear? What do you need to wear? What can you wear? What suits you? What doesn't suit you? And there's so many things. But interesting crossover. What's a guilty pleasure for you, Margarita?
Cooking. I will cook Asian fusion, Russian, Italian, French, you name it, I'll cook it. It's actually how I de-stress. So it's like, if it's 3:00 in the morning, for some reason, this doesn't happen often, but if it's 3:00 in the morning and I'm like stressed out, instead of eating or watching TV, I'm gonna go into the kitchen and I'm gonna start cooking. If it's 2:00 in the afternoon and I'm stressed the hell out, I don't necessarily need to eat what I cook. I'll just cook. Like I'll put on some music. My guilty pleasure of listening to like Spanish guitar radio on Pandora while I cook, and then I just let it come over, like take over. And my friends were so funny when people used to come over each other's houses back in the good old days when I was in Florida. My friends would come over and they were like, "Can you like?" They know. After a few times, they knew better than to ask me for recipes because I can't give you a recipe. I just see things and I throw it in there. And like my friends, they're just like, okay, but I mean, I see it, but like how much nutmeg? I'm like, I don't know, just throw it in there. And she's like, well, but like how much dill? I'm like, just chop it up and put it in there. And they're like, well, why can't you just tell us? Like, I'll tell you what I put in there, but don't ask me how much of something. I would suck at a cookbook. Like, I just see the food and I know that it works together, and I'll put it in together and I'll make it work. Like, I can make sauces, I can make stews, it doesn't matter. Cooking to me it's a great pastime and it's a great de-stressor. And then of course, when you could host parties, like, and folks could just break bread and, just chat and just like have a drink and enjoy a meal and have a conversation and completely forget about the regular stressors of their lives and just have a conversation, like that's fun. That's a guilty pleasure for me.
Where did you learn that from?
Ooh, I mean, everybody in my family cooks. I still think I cook better than everybody in my family. I don't know. Well, in my childhood memories, my grandmother, like I would be in the kitchen while my grandmother would be making the supper or the lunch, and like I would be helping her. So if I had to hone in, I would think that it came from that grandma memory. Like you're sitting in the kitchen and you're like helping your grandma roll out the wheat or the dough for making dumplings. I don't know, but like I don't make dumplings. For me, baking is something that I'm really not that good at. Cooking, yes. Baking, not so much. I'll cook anything, but if you ask me to bake a pie, we might order.
Love it. So tell me, if you were to define your fire in the belly in one or two words, what does it mean for you?
My value?
Your fire in the belly.
Oh, my fire in the belly. I'm like, what? My value. My fire in the belly. Ooh, it's drive to improve. Whether I'm improving myself, whether I'm improving my work, whether I am improving the lives of people around me, whether I'm improving the craft of whatever the heck I cook in the kitchen today. It's that inherent like need to do better and to improve, like fixing things, like getting my hands dirty, rolling up my sleeves and getting in there. Like I love that stuff. Everything on the implementation stage of whatever it is, that to me is excitement. I need to create. I love it. Whatever that it is. So that's why like the implementation stage of healthcare, of launching practices, that comes from like starting it. Cooking, you just had like 5 pieces of vegetables and then I just threw them all in together and now you have a stew. So it's like it's the starting, it's the creating, designing. I don't know, like I can't wait to have a new place so that I can make it my own and really really make it thrive, like from my own ideas of how it should look and really make it home.
I love it. Where can people learn more about you, hunt you down, track you down, stalk you, any of the above?
Awesome. So mkmedicalsolutions.com, solutions with an S at the end. On Instagram, I am at mkmedconsultant. On Facebook and on LinkedIn, I am Margarita Khosh, and Khosh is spelled Khosh. Margarita is spelled like you would the drink, the island, or the pizza, because they're all the same. And I'm on Facebook and on LinkedIn. I am also available at MK Medical Solutions LLC, which is the name of my firm.
I didn't know there was a Margarita Island.
I discovered that recently because I was like telling somebody about the pizza or the drink, and they're like, or the island. I'm like, what island? And it's, I think, somewhere off the coast of Venezuela.
There you go. You learn something new. Well, I learn lots of new things every day. Is there a final message you'd like to leave with people?
Don't be afraid to use your voice to speak out about changing something if it will help at least one person. Don't be afraid to rock the boat, and don't let a good crisis go to waste. Learn from it, fix it, do whatever you can to help it improve, because if we learn nothing, then we shouldn't be here.
Margarita, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate you, and we look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun, actually. I didn't even realize that it's already been, oh my God, it's been an hour and 50 minutes. I feel like I just started talking to you 10 minutes ago. This is awesome.
It's fun.
Thank
It's
you.
fun. Thank you for
Enjoy
sharing.
what you do.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Be well.
And
Happy
you.
New Year.
And you.